wanting to learn more about training youth athletes, stay tuned. Working with youth athletes is one of the great demographics of being in the fitness industry. This audience, they're young, impressionable, and you could really help shape their outlook on athletics, on fitness, health, and hopefully help them get to that next level as an athlete. In this episode of the KIPS podcast, I'm going to be bringing on John Sinclair, someone that shares a passion for working with youth athletes, and we're going to be talking about the discussions with the parents, the movements that hopefully help them become a better athlete, a well-rounded athlete that is, and also talk about linking that conversation to the assessment and also to movements. My name is Tyler Valencia. I'm the founder and owner of KIPS. Before we get to the episode, I want to share a piece of research that really shaped my outlook on working with youth athletes and also movement. This piece of research from Hardy et al. 2013 is titled 13-Year Trends in Child and Adolescent Fundamental Movement Skills 1997 to 2010. The objective of this study was to describe 13-year trends in children's fundamental movement skills competency. The 5 fundamental movement skills were sprint run, vertical jump, catch, kick, and overarm throw. These children were between the ages of 9 and 15, which in the US is late elementary school to early high school. Overall, students' FMS competency was low, but increased in the kick, whereas competency in the vertical jump decreased. Overall, the authors stated that strategies to improve children's physical activity should consider ensuring children are taught FMS to a competency level so that they can enjoy being physically active. While this study doesn't exactly pertain to youth athletes, it does have to do with adolescent fitness and exercise. If we can, as trainers, make them better movers, more active, they have a higher chance of physical activity later on in life. That was one of the things pointed out in the discussion, was how if these kids can master the fundamental movement skills that I mentioned before, those basics, they have a higher chance of being more physically active, wanting to exercise more. They also showed that if they don't, they have a higher chance of negative self-talk and health issues. So in this episode, we talk about things like performance coaches, specialization in one sport, and if those things can lead to injury. These are all things to set the stage if we are really doing a service as trainers to just work on one sport or make them better all-around movers and athletes. Let's bring on John and get to the meat of this podcast episode. John, for our listeners, can you provide a brief background on yourself, how you got into the fitness industry, what you've done, and what you're working on now?
Sure. Well, I was born in 1976 during the Summer Olympics in Montreal. Do we want to go back that far? No, a little further forward? All right. So I grew up in small town Saskatchewan, where sports was my entire life. For me, spending time playing with friends and playing every sport you could imagine was how I knew that I didn't want to be a farmer. So I moved from a farming community and then decided to go study sport at the University of Alberta. So I got a phys ed degree at the University of Alberta, and that whole program was all about sport performance, from coaching, athletic therapy, strength and conditioning, all the beautiful things about us learning motor development and anatomy and physiology and biomechanics. So that was kind of like my degree. And then when I got out of the university, I had to get my first job. So I started working in a physical therapy clinic. Did that for a few years, started working with hockey players, of course, because you're from Canada. So I started working with them, developing hockey players on ice and off ice. And then, of course, that naturally led me into the fitness industry. And so I started working at gyms. I was the first trainer hired by World Health in Edmonton, Alberta. And we built out a whole program there that lasted. I had a 13-year career at World Health. And throughout that time, I got really passionate about education. And so I became the director of education for World Health. I got involved with PTA Global as one of their first faculty for those guys. Wow. And then we started Institute of Motion with Michelle, started working with Viper Pro, became their director of programming for Viper Pro and for IOM. And then I got pulled down here to South Florida. So I moved down here to become fitness director at Midtown Athletic Club, did that for a couple of years. Then I went on to having my own gym, did that for about 4 or 5 years. Then COVID hit. I got out of that. Now I just consult and train out of my garage now.
I love it. I love it. Now, for this episode, I did a lot of preparation in terms of listening to different episodes that you were on and researching topics that you like to share and hopefully get the word out there on. And the one that we're going to start with here has to do with single sport athletes or sport specialization. That is one of the hot topics when it comes to youth athletics. And I'm going to set the stage for our listeners with some backstory here. Whenever I think about sports specialization, I always come back to Michael Thompson. If you're a Laker fan, you know who that is. Or if you listen to Laker games, you know he's one of the commentators, the play-by-play. And Michael Thompson, a great athlete by himself. I believe he was the number one pick for his draft years and years ago. But Michael Thompson also had or has 3 sons that are professional athletes. Of course, there's genes involved in those. But the part of this whole story that I want to set the stage with actually has to do with his off-season training when he himself was a professional athlete. On the radio sometimes, he would talk about how when he was going into off season, he would not even touch a basketball. He wanted to work on the movements and muscle groups that he wasn't using during an NBA season. During an NBA season, very common movements for basketball players that whether you're lateral shifting, jumping, shooting, a lot of the same movements. So when he would go back home to the Caribbean country that he's from, I'm drawing a blank on it right now, but he would just work different sports, different strength training. And I'm sure that approach helped with his sons growing up and their development. John, what are your thoughts on single sport athlete specialization to kind of set the stage for this episode?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in a town of 300 people where everybody had to play. So, and it was in Canada. So you couldn't play year round like you can here in South Florida. So yeah, I grew up, I played 11 sports in high school and 5 in university. And so people go, well, how much time did you have? I said, well, I was also in 3 bands. So I was into everything. So I'm going to come from a biased spot, but also because from an education standpoint and what I've learned and what I've been coaching for so long is that your true development happens from doing lots of different stuff, not from doing one thing, right? And so the evidence is way behind my theory of doing more sports. You're going to have better athletic development. You're going to be a better athlete, because what makes you good in a sport is not that you do that sport so well. It's that you have athleticism to be able to develop that sport. So my philosophy on coaching has always been, if you're going to bring your kid to me, I'm going to make him a better athlete. I'm not going to make him a better player because I'm not going to spend time doing skill-based stuff. I'm going to spend time teaching them how to move better by giving them the skills that they're not getting because they only play one sport. So it was really eye-opening when I moved down here to Florida that kids were playing baseball year-round, because we didn't do that. Like I played baseball in the late spring and summer, and then we were playing hockey. But then I was also playing volleyball, curling, badminton, golf, track and field, cross country running. Like we were involved in everything. And that was what was so beautiful is our government / school systems set things up in like, this is when you do it seasonally, right? Down here, it's a free for all. It's like, I'm going to get you in an academy and then for tennis, and then you're going to do a little bit of school sports, but most of it's going to be the academy. And then the USTA is going to take you and you're going to want you to play in 60 tournaments when you're 15 years old. And it's anarchy down here, right? Yeah. And then baseball is travel baseball. It's all this. And so I've talked to kids and they'd be like, well, when's the last time you played baseball? And I'd say, well, it's probably been about 10 years. And they're like, how can you even throw? I was like, what are you talking about? Because these coaches I believe it's the coaches are brainwashing these kids. If I don't throw every day, I'm not going to be able to keep throwing harder, which is total nonsense. Because I could pitch 4 games a weekend every weekend in the summer, and then I'd get 8 months off to recover. So my elbow was never sore, my shoulder was never sore, and now we know that there's increasingly more and more injury rates are going up from overuse from only playing one sport. So if you pose that question to me again, sorry, long about way, there's no way early sports specialization is beneficial for any athlete in this world on the planet.
Agree. 100% agree. I think you hit it on the nose with the coach, but I think the big part of it is also the parent with it. A story that I'll quickly share is I remember I was doing I called it more of a strength training class for volleyball athletes when I previously lived in Southern California. And one time this young athlete and his father came to my class because they heard it was a jump class. They were going to be able to increase their vertical. And he was a basketball athlete, a young basketball athlete. And so they came out to see me, and I told them that I would first take a look at how he moves and see if what I think is some low-hanging fruit in order to make him a better athlete. And I'm just going to put it right now because I know for a fact this person's not listening to this podcast. They couldn't even touch their toes. We were just doing basic movement drills, warming up, and they could not hinge. They could not even hinge far enough to come into any type of hamstring stretch, dynamic hamstring stretch. And all of a sudden, like, well, can you help him dunk? We need to get him to dunk. That was the big goal. That was going to get him to the next step. What do you think when a parent brings their athlete to you? How are you taking them in? How are you going to assess them, but also create something in your head to be able to have that conversation with a parent that kind of paints the picture for them? What does that process look like?
Yeah, it's usually age specific. I'll preface it with that. So a lot of times, I'll have parents bring like a 7-year-old over to me, and I'm like, no, too young. Take him and go put him in another sport. Right? Like spend the money and the time that you would have go have them play recreational soccer or something if they're a tennis player, right? Like something that's kind of a similar, but like a cross training idea of it, right? Or put them in swimming, right? Like one day, if they're a superstar tennis player, they're going to have their own pool. They need to swim. I don't know. Like the idea is for me is first, like, can your kid move well? Right. And so there's a developmental sequence of movement that we need to follow. Right. Mm-hmm. And so I'll give tennis as an example. Kids start really young. But what happens is that they work the skill of hitting a ball so often that they've actually lost the skill of knowing how to catch. Right. Or they were never taught it. So one of the things I do early with these kids is teach them how to throw accurately and catch accurately, because that's a motor skill that should happen before you hit anything. So depending on their age, I'm assessing all motor ability, right? Mm-hmm. What is their reactivity like? What is their hand and eye coordination? What is their hand, foot, and eye coordination? Can they catch things? How well do they move in time and space? Can they do it efficiently? Can they do it while slowing themselves down? Can they speed up? Can they accelerate after already running? Can they accelerate from a dead start, right? Yeah. Can they jump? Can they land? Like, it's a big battery of things that we do, and I don't do it all at once. I'll just kind of cherry pick things by what I'm observing. But we'll always start with, in most sports, they need to know athletic ready position, right? Well, I get kids that are 14, 15 years old that are playing travel baseball that don't even know athletic ready position, right? So how are you grounding a ball when your tail's tucked between your legs, right? Like, that's such an inefficient starting point, right? Yeah. And then we got to look at other specific things that they're doing that are repetitive. So we go, okay, well, if you're a golfer or a baseball player or something like that, and you're always swinging in the same direction, can you replicate it the other way just as efficiently as the other way? If not, we're going to have some problems down the road, right? So, so those are the things I kind of look at from a movement standpoint first. I think one thing that is kind of overprescribed is the idea of assessing the quantity of what somebody can do over the quality of what they can do, right? So we, in our industry, the strength and conditioning industry, we're extremely fascinated by force output, right? So we want to measure how much force or how much weight can I lift, right? And with high school kids, like, their brains are triggered to, I'm stronger than you. How much weight can go on the bar, right? And so how much can I lift? And so in the conversation of strength and conditioning, oftentimes parents think of strength training as lifting weights, and it's so much more than that. I know we'll talk about it here in the future, but I'm more about how well do you move, and can I make you a better mover, i.e. be more athletic in your movement, than I am interested in what your vertical jump is or how fast you are. Like, that will come, right? Yeah. The more coordinated you get, and the more your body can learn how to be fast because you're more efficient and economical, then we can start working on speed stuff down the road, or agility stuff, or change of direction, or chaotic reactivity. Those things come, but you have to demonstrate that you can move well first.
Yeah. I think from a business end of it, there is a mixture of what, almost like you just have to do it to check some boxes. I'm just going to say it that way because I can recall the last time that I worked with a full team. It was a baseball team. And yes, I did some of these strength-based, power-based assessments for a large team, but it was mostly to check a box so that they had those things done because whoever they worked with before, they said that this needed to be done. And so, yeah, I'll do these for you. But the quality of a movement after that type of feedback, hearing the coach say after they finished a program with me, they felt faster. They felt like they could move freer, that they felt like they were reacting better to a baseball, to a hit, a ground ball, or a fly ball, whatever that might be. Those are the outcomes I feel like coaches should try to center their thought process. Okay, the drills I incorporated in this programming, that was better. That I may want to tweak some of these items, because that type of feedback, I feel like those are really helping youth athletes being able to react to some type of stimulus. With your type of work that you're doing and working with youth athletes, what are some low-hanging fruit items that you feel like are out there for a lot of youth athletes?
Yeah, so athletic ready position is one. And then the other part to it is just like every task or every sport requires you to be able to do something that is task-based, right? And so the way that I look at it is we'll take the sport, we break the sport down, and here's all the tasks in offense and defense, depending on the sport. And then we'll look at, well, what are the movement skills that make up those tasks? You have to be very proficient at all those movement skills if you want to play a higher level, right? So you're not going to get there just because the exit velocity on your bat is X, right? It's, well, how well do you play the game? Can you even get on base? Okay, I talk to these kids all the time. Why do you have one swing? Because you have multiple swings because there's multiple pitches. And they'll say, well, no, you just have to adjust your, I'm like, well, then if you're adjusting that, it's not your one true swing, right? So the goal is to hit the ball somewhere where somebody else isn't. So you better be able to get your hands in different positions and be up in the box or back in the box or off to the side, knowing anticipating what pitch is coming for what scenario. The only way you do that is you can't practice one swing and then be good at all that, right? You have to practice being good at all that. So the trick is how do I get the most fundamental movement patterns to the point where they're just automatic? It doesn't matter what sport I play. And this is the problem of single sport specialization, is they specialize on only the tasks that are only the movements within the tasks of the demand of the sport. Whereas if I take you and put you in different sports, you're learning all those tasks as the environment dictates, not what coach is telling you to do, right? So we spend so much time with athletes going to structured practices, structured games, and then structured specialized performance enhancement, right? So I'm going to a hitting coach or a pitching coach or on top of everything else instead of, well, no, you need a movement coach because you're only playing one sport. So that's the value that I bring to parents. I'm not saying take your kid out of these other sports and only put them in this sport and this sport and this sport and this sport. I know you don't have time for that. But what I can do as a value add is I can try and give them the movement skills that they don't get from their sport. So I do things quite variably to offset the stress of that sport, but also teach them movement skills that's just going to enhance their game, right?
A quick break in this video. If you are needing CEUs, make sure that you head to the link that's in the description where you can find all our online courses that have pre-approvals with NASM, ISSA, ACE, AFA, NCSF, and with Nesta. We of course offer free content on our YouTube channel, but if you're needing professional ed, with some of you having the full amount to recertify, make sure you head to that link. And now let's get back to the video. Can you so this just popped in my head here. Can you give an example for that trainer and I feel like as Fit Pros, me and you, that are really jazzed about this type of training. We both like Viper Pros, we like movement, we like all these unconventional tools that I feel like sometimes we'll talk over some trainers' heads when they're like, wait, what's a Viper Pro? What are they talking about with tasks? Can you give an example, like just a very small little peek into, let's say, one training session just to give them an idea of how they can take looking at an athlete, seeing what type of movements they are doing in that to perform their sport of choice, and then taking that to the weight room where they feel comfortable, just to kind of connect the dots for one of those trainers. Can you do that for us?
Yeah, sure. So let's take, for example, we'll say the game of baseball, because I've been talking about it. Yeah. And then we'll use the drill grounding a ball, right? So they need to be able to demonstrate athletic ready position. So I'll just tilt this down a bit, right? And so athletic ready position is, am I on the ball of my feet? I got my knees kind of pointed in a little bit, which is different than what the fitness industry tells us, right? They tell us right here. This allows me to go to my left or to my right, right? And so I'm in a position where I'm on the ball of my foot. I can get a credit card underneath my heel. And then in order to ground the ball, I got to be able to get in this direction or this direction, right? So that means I've got to either shuffle. So the movement pattern might be a shuffle pattern, right? Or I might need to cross and then shuffle to ground. But then I go, well, I'm not going to be grounding balls in the gym with you. So why don't I grab a tool, right? Yep. So I've got a tool here, and I'm going to teach you how to do this shuffle tilt. See if I can get this angle here. Well, I'm going to take this, and I'm going to shuffle back and forth, right? And I can work on keeping in that ready position as I move to the side. And the best part about this is if I'm a shortstop and the ball comes to my right side, I can use that tool to teach me what angle I need to get into the ground at, so I'm not wasting energy throwing it back to first base. So if I get this, I'm going to turn this a little bit here for you. So if I take this Viper to the side, if you can see, I'm leaning back into where I came from when I ground that ball. So if I'm going to my right and I'm shortstop and I'm getting here, if I can ground the ball here and already have my momentum to be able to come and throw to first base, I'm now in a more advantageous position. So I can use this tool to have a better body angle, right? And I can teach those kids how to get into this position, come up and have all their momentum already going to first base. Yep. Because it all starts with that fundamental start position, right? So I can use any tool that I have at my disposal should really be used to, how do I use that tool to make the skill easier, not harder, right?
Agree.
That to me is sports specificity. It's not make things complicated, make it as a teaching tool that makes their task easier, right? Yep. We can do constraint-based skills where I put something in the way, right? But it still comes down to when we're talking about fundamentals, the tool should aid in the fundamentals, right?
Agree.
If I put this here and block me, that means I got to get around it. For tennis, for example, the ball's coming outside in, I'm outside. I might use that to come around to hit a forehand, right? So I can use it as a constraint, or I can use it as an aid. But I find most of the kids, I don't need to constrain anything. Their lack of athleticism is their constraint. So how do I make them feel like they're just moving a little bit better? Then when year one is over, year two's beginning. And I'm fortunate, I get some parents will send their kids to me at like 13, and I got them till they're 18 before they go to college. So I've got a long time to prepare them.
Yeah.
Having said that, I hope that I answered your question, Tyler. The tool should be, what is aiding us.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good. Connecting the pieces for some of the listeners, I think, is something that I strive for with this podcast, that I think that we'll want to connect it for every level of listener that we have. And I think that was great there. And I do have to throw in there that for our listeners that are listening on maybe Spotify, Apple Podcasts, I would go check out that recording just to see John move on YouTube. He mentioned when he was born, and he moves better than any youth athlete that I've seen before. So You got to go check out the YouTube version of this podcast to see that.
I should mention, I used this exact same drill when I went to go visit the University of Miami baseball hurricane team. So when I went to the University of Miami, I did the same drill with awesome player Jake Ogden and Daniel Cuvée, who are both last night. They made it to the super regional next round last night, and they're great players and they're wonderful people. Nick Soto, I got to give a shout out to him. Such a wonderful guy and such a great coach. But I shared the same concepts with them, right?
Yep.
And they were like, here are guys that are at a level that I didn't achieve in my level of baseball, right? And so I look up to these kids because they played that, but their humility that they showed, and they were just like, that was really cool. That'll really help me, you know?
Yep.
Is that they get it because they've gone through this so much, right? And they've rehearsed that drill so many times. So imagine if we can get kids doing purposeful stuff, right? That is not necessarily on the baseball field, but helps them in their development, then we're already way further ahead in terms of their efficiency and economy on the field, right?
Agree.
That's where I think we can provide a lot of value to, not only just in the world of strength and conditioning, but in athletic development, right? Which is strength and conditioning in the weight room. Everyone understands what that is, but athletic development is not quite all that well understood in our industry, you know?
Yeah. I think a lot of it, in my opinion, stems from trying to hit on keywords, hot topics of the moment. I think anybody that's worked with youth athletes can name any right now. I always think of people wanting to do, what is it called? Like, there was a more fancier term for working with female youth athletes. But there's essentially trying to prevent valgus knee, and the people who are trying to do multiple week camps specifically for that purpose. But yet, what about overall athleticism, overall strength training for our youth? And another one, how I mentioned earlier, with jump camps. Right. Are you really benefiting these youth athletes if you're just going to be working on one task, one certain item, when these developing human beings could benefit from other areas that hopefully will keep them active? I mean, I don't want to get into the side of achieving different levels in sport, how hard it is, but if you can help them learn different parts of strength and conditioning, hopefully they can be more active in their lives. I'm going to switch now to our quick hits, because there are some topics in these that I know you're going to provide some great nuggets of knowledge for our listeners. And with the quick hits, these are just initial reactions, what you think on them, and we'll of course expand into them. One of them, the first one I'm going to go with, is one that I've heard you dive into before, and I think it'd be great. So the quick hit on this one is: Olympic lifting technique is necessary for high school athletes wanting to participate in college athletics. Yeah,
it 100% true. It seems to be a focal point for most Div 1, Div 2, Div 3 programs. Yeah. So I feel like Olympic lifting is a sport, right? So you're having to learn another sport to do strength and conditioning for your sport at that level. And for sure, if you're a football player, you need to learn how to do it. If you don't already know how to do it, then that's a problem. But the people that are teaching Olympic weightlifting maybe never Olympic weightlifted, right? So they didn't compete in it. Or that was me. I taught Olympic weightlifting for a lot of years. I'd never been on stage. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So I'm going to have to do a competition. So I actually know what that feels like to do that sport, right?
Oh, nice.
And so I finally did it. Almost died. Well, I was like 37 when I did it, right? For my first one. But so that's one of the things I focus on. And I was fortunate enough. I had an amazing coach. His name was Larry Mather. He was actually scheduled to be the Canadian national Olympic coach during the 80 Olympics, but then we boycotted, right, with the US. And so he never got a chance to go, but he was a brilliant coach. I learned so much from him. And then I want to pass that on to high school kids, right? Because usually after the first year that they spend with me learning all the fundamentals that would be required to know and be very proficient at. So deadlifting, front squatting, overhead pressing, like you need to be very good at those things, and you need to be very accurate in how you're doing those things, because Olympic weightlifting is so fast and there's so much more coordination to it. So it requires somebody who is also certified as an Olympic coach, I believe, in order to teach that efficiently. And so unfortunately, our high schools, not all our high school coaches are certified and or have done Olympic weightlifting, but it's a skill that's needed to get to the college level. So by the time they get to the college level, they're already, if you're the freshman that already knows that strength coach loves you, because I don't have to spend time teaching this kid. He can jump right in with the sophomores or the juniors, right? And so that's why I kind of double down on teaching that skill for kids when I know that they have an aspiration of playing college sports.
I like that. I like that a lot. And I will admit that that's one not all lifts, but more the power lifting movements. I was actually surprised the last time I worked with a full team, how many of them were pretty decent at power lifts, deadlifting and back squats. They had a lot of the little small cues already down. So I think that has spread across high school based athletics, that they know that they have to do these, whether they were taught it, they looked them up. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that is hopefully starting to integrate more into other programs, that they understand that for that reason alone that you just mentioned, that they're going to be doing them at the next level. If you want to be able to jump in and not have to go back and learn a lot of cues, here's what you should focus on in these years. I'm going to give you the next.
I spend most of my time they got to learn it with a broomstick and a bar for a long time. They're not doing it under a lot of load until that pattern feels as smooth as this does for them, right?
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that feels smooth, give them tiny little corrections, and then let their body learn it as they go. And then rather than, oh, yeah, you can deadlift 225, we're going to put 135 on. Different game, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And especially, Olympic lifting, the small cues are what make the difference, in my opinion. But I'm going to give you the next one here.
Sure.
Speed ladders are impractical tools.
I wouldn't say they're impractical. They're maybe often overused, or used in a way that is just like a conditioning tool. Mm-hmm. Whereas really it's teaching people the art of coordination with your feet, right? And so I use it as, I'm going to teach you how to coordinate a specific pattern. Then we're going to see how well you do if I change that pattern on you, right?
Agreed.
So I use it more as a coordination and learning tool. And then really, the ladder is just a tool of many tools we use for agility. Agility, by definition, is our ability to change direction while maintaining one's base of support or balance. But it also is a great way to teach people how to interact with the ground, right? And so if you do it right, it's a great elasticity trainer, right? Teaching elasticity in the tissues and in the feet. Oftentimes we wear really comfy shoes and we don't teach our body to interact with the ground. I never wear shoes now that I'm in South Florida. So I'm always interacting with the ground. But we want to build that elasticity in the tissue, right? And then so by creating different patterns and reacting with that pattern, and then being able to challenge that pattern to either be known, going from a known environment to an unknown environment. That's when those tools can be really valuable. So learning the coordination and the footwork, but don't let it be how you progress into a game, right?
Yeah.
So then it's like, all right, so you've built the foundation, you've built the tissue's ability to deal with the ground. Now let's put you in an unknown environment, right? Not mean unknown as in I've never been here before, but how am I processing environmental cues, right? So as I'm going through the ladder, do I have someone pushing on my shoulders? I'm trying to maintain that, right? So I've now added an environmental element that is going to change how my body perceives, how do I still get this task done? Or am I going to throw a ball at you as you're doing it? Or am I going to now eliminate the ladder and you have a ball's coming and you have to take that ball and move away if you're doing it for soccer, right? And so it's learning how to use it progressively within your system of coaching so that it goes from known in the environment to unknown, linear, to multi-directional, right?
Yep.
And be able to progress those things over time so that this just becomes intuitive to them. Like someone's coming this way, boom, I put my foot in the ground, I'm gone.
Yep.
Right. Instead of I'm only going to do it like this. And then someone comes at me and my brain only wants to do this. Right. So the goal is to now, how do I use that environment to change my direction, or so that I don't even have to think about it? I think of like Connor McDavid when he's playing hockey, right? Like he doesn't think about where he's going to go. He reads what the defender is going to do and he goes, I'm gone. Right. Bye. Yep. And he blows by you. So those are things that get developed over time. But I don't blame tools or say they're not useful. They're not useful when used incorrectly or not in a systematic way that provides value for the athlete.
Agree. And I would even take this back to what we started on, talking with youth athletes and do they move well? Here is something that especially young youth athletes, they most likely don't know how to position their body. So if you can introduce a tool that they've seen before, they maybe seen some athlete that they know that you could put down in front of them that they will have fun with, build some confidence and learn some body positions. I'm not saying this is going to make them an expert, but if you could just teach them some movements to get that system going, I think that goes a long way. Do I think that is going to make them a professional athlete that they can react to any stimulus? No, obviously not. But just getting those basic fundamentals of where their feet go, how do they coordinate their hand-eye movements while moving through the speed ladder, I think that there is some benefit. I know that some peers that I've met throughout the years, they think they're bad. They don't actually help out. I think every tool could have a piece in a training program. It's just how you utilize it, as you've explained there. Last one here with the quick hits. What are some of your favorite resources for training youth athletes? So somebody listening and they're like, oh man, I really like how John talks about working with young athletes. I want to know more. What are some of your favorites that you tap into on a monthly or even yearly basis?
Yeah, I usually kind of just follow mentors, right? Like people that have done this for a long time and listen to them. The multi-directional game, I think Lee Taft is absolutely just beautiful to listen to. He's such a good coach. He makes everything practical. He's a basketball guy, but anything he says can translate to any multi-directional chaotic sport. So check out leetaft.com. He's got some great courses in there if you're a coach looking to want to do some of that stuff. And so I kind of go find some podcasts, find some people and just listen to what they have to say, and either to not just to validate what I think, but more so just to look for like, hey, have you thought of this or have you thought of that, right? And then our industry for the most part is really good. Like you'll find people that will have a difference of opinion, but I think any opportunity you can have, some true discourse is a good thing as long as it's respectful, right? And so, I learned that from one of my mentors, Michel Delcourt, who invented the Viper, right? That's what he says all the time is, discourse is not a bad thing. Us having a difference of opinion is actually a good thing because we're coming from a different perspective. And a lot of times, our perspective is through somebody else's eyes, but our perception is through your own eyes, right? So it's often good just to hear, why did somebody program in a certain way? Might be not because that's just the way they do it, but because of it so happened to be the people that they were training required that at that time, and they're outside your purview, right? So I've never worked with Olympic bobsledders, but my very good friend, Quinn Sekulich, is the Canadian Olympic bobsled strength coach, and I listen to him all the time, right? It's not going to apply to a lot of the athletes that I teach because I don't have any 240-pound gorilla ninjas to train. Like that's what those people are, but it's fascinating to listen to him program. Like he's like, I do. You got on here. Tempo run is 50 meters. Yeah, that's as far as they need to run. It's like, okay, cool. I love it. Right. But I never would have had that perspective because it's outside of your perspective. Right.
Yep. I like it. I like it a lot. We're to move to the podcast takeaways. This podcast has flown by. A lot of great gems in there. And I really hope that people that are listening dive more into all the things that you've talked about and how they approach working with youth athletes. I think that it is a fun part of working as a trainer, working in the fitness industry. Young athletes, they're motivated. They want to hear often, in my opinion, they often want to hear what you have next because they haven't been through life yet. So they are ready. They're sponging as much as they can. And you can really have a big impact on their careers. So working with youth athletes, there is the parental element. And that's where I wanted to guide this last question here for the podcast takeaways. John, what are 3 focus areas for discussing strength training with an athlete's parent?
Yeah. So the first thing is just kind of overcoming some myths that happen from strength training. Because there's a lot of times people associate strength training with only weight training. Yeah. And I kind of take them through, well, there's about 7 different types of strength training that all have value, right? And it's not just done with weights, right? Like I can take a 4-kilogram rubber tube and crush you with it. It has nothing to do with weight, all right? Like the number that's on this is only 4 kilograms when it's not more moving, right? It's measure of inertia. So whether it's a rubber tube or a dumbbell, it needs to fit into a silo of what theme of strength are we looking at, right? So is it tensile strength? Is it odd position strength? Is it dead strength, endurance, relative strength, agile strength, maximal strength? Those are all different properties of how we overcome a task and then produce some sort of result, right? And you can even have like yielding strength in that there, right? Like the ability to overcome external resistance. And so that's the first thing, is just getting clear on what strength training is and what it's not only. Because a lot of parents will come to me and they go, yeah, we want to start him on a strength program because he needs to gain some size. Okay, that's one part of it, right? And then there's other parts too, right? Like, have you thought about how strength training improves your connective tissue makeup, right? No, like that's the difference between muscle strength and movement strength. Mm-hmm. You know, being able to reinforce your connective tissue through strength training, right? And so they're 2 different styles of training, but both needed. Yep. So that'd be number 1. 2 is that strong kids get hurt too. It just happens way less, right? And so knowing that we need to apply the appropriate type of strength training. This isn't just about how much weight you lift, it's how well can you mitigate force, right? And so force mitigation is something we don't talk about because it's not as sexy as force production, right? And so force mitigation is really how does force enter the body and how do I capture it to be able to use it, right? And so think of it as like taking a hit versus giving a hit, right? Like how well do you bounce? I was 5'4", 140-pound junior hockey player in Canada. I had to bounce, right? And I was able to bounce and get up and go and be able to be effective as a player, right?
Yeah.
And then the last thing is like strength training is not just following workouts. This is about technique and mastery. This is a whole other motor skill, right? Yep. And so when I try to teach these kids and understand like technique matters, right? Just like technique in your sport, like technique in the weight room matters. So it's not something you can just pick up a workout off of the good old Instagram and go show up at the gym and do it on your own. Like I was, I think, in my first or second year at university in the phys ed program doing this, got a gym membership and was scared to death in that gym. I don't know where everyone's getting all this courage from, but I was scared that I was going to do something wrong, not just for myself, but to embarrass other members of the gym, right? Like, so I go to like the guy that owns it, like, here's what I think I'm doing. Do you like this idea? And the guys go, yeah. I'm like, could you walk me around here and show me what to do so I don't look like a jackass? Like now kids, they don't even care, right? And so one of the things that I think is really important is teaching them that, look, in a way, they're learning another sport when they come to the gym. So be patient. You have to realize that biology doesn't adapt like this. Like he's not going to gain 15 pounds in a month. Like, I don't know where you're reading this, right? Like this is a long game, right? In order to gain muscle and size and strength and power, like that takes time because it's part of a developmental approach, right? So
I always like that one with my kid needs to put on 5-10 pounds.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
What's the purpose of it?
Yeah.
How old is your kid?
Is there a weight restriction? Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not, but in some ways, like in the 90s, that was really a thing. Like I could play at a really high level, but I was being scouted in the Western Hockey League when I was a bantam player. So I was like 14, I think I was already 15, and they thought I was the 13-year-old because I was so short, right? And so little. So then it was like, well, we don't want him. I was like, well, you obviously like the way I played the game, right? But to them, I was already too old and not big enough, right? And so I hear where parents are getting at is like, if they gain 5 pounds to hit the ball further. Well, not necessarily. If the swing is shit, pardon my language, if his swing is not good, right? It's not going to go further because he's got 5 pounds on, right? So we just have to be clear with parents that like your expectations and what will happen with your kid may not coalesce. But I'll tell you what will is that if we provide the right environment, the right coaching, the right device and or the amount of force given to at the right time, they will develop. There's no doubt about that, because there hasn't been a single kid that I've worked with that didn't play the following year injury free, right? So we teach them in the right manner and they don't get hurt. Well, that's going to open up some doors for them, right? Your best ability is availability, they say, right?
100%. I think that's a big one right there, and a good takeaway right there. Now I have to joke that I will have to click explicit content when I upload this podcast to Spotify. But I'm kidding. Before we sign off here, John, can you give social media links, website where people can find you, any upcoming events?
Yeah. So if you go to my personal website, it's www.authentic.healthcoach.com. I have like a little web series there where folks can sign up. If you're a parent listening to this, you can sign up and listen to, I think it's a 5-series little web discussion on the pitfalls of single sport specialization and how we develop athletes. So I've got that, and you can just email me directly at johnnysinclair@me.com. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. And then also I've got another website called www.7movements.com. And that one is, if you see other podcasts with me, and I'm sometimes talking about the wonderful world of microdosing movement for non-movers. So we've created a whole company around teaching people that don't move how they can move just a little bit to improve their health outcomes.
Yep. Great stuff. And there will be information in the description for this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. John, thank you for taking the time to discuss a big topic, I feel like, for people that are wanting to become trainers, want to work with young athletes. And I always appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be a part of it with you, bud.